3 centuries ago, the Epsilon 7 space station sent out the signal, "Help USE's a cry," that resonated across the galaxy. The colossal war giants awoke, stepping into a universe forever changed. When they landed on Colony D17, they discovered that their enemy was not mindless predators, but victims of the star-consuming force known as the Devorers of Stars. The mission to rescue 2 opposing species, from UV negotiation chambers to plasma-bathed battlefield sys, gradually unveiling the universe's greatest mystery of light and darkness. Are you ready to witness the awakening war of the ages? Distress signal from the abandoned space station. The Epsilon 7 space station drifted silently through the infinite void, its rusted modules faintly reflecting the distant starlight. Nearly 3 centuries had passed since she was abandoned. Her solar power systems were all but drained, leaving only flickering electrical circuits like the fragile heartbeat of a dying creature. Moss-covered solar panels no longer captured enough photons, and the pressurized hull hissed metal groans whenever stale air escaped through fissures. In the communications control room, a single red warning light flared to life, pulsing like the final alarm bell of a forgotten civilization. All the remaining life support energy had been routed to a tiny emergency transmitter, engineered for absolute minimal power consumption. The last stored current coursed through superconducting capacitors, tripped the timing circuitry, and broadcast a simple message: "Help us." No identification codes, no encrypted passwords, just 3 letters echoing across a century of silence. Each transmission was sent on 2 frequencies, one on the standard radio band and one in the deep space low band to maximize the chance of detection by any listening post across the galaxy. That forlorn "Help US" signal rippled through the resonance detectors of countless relay satellites, slicing through the region once known to humanity as the Black Triangle, chaotic ghost field left over from the Black Dominion Wars. For over 6 weeks, faint bursts of the plea brushed past drifting research vessels, dismissed as coincidental static or natural interference. Only when the Earth Colonies Federation's Deep Space Relay at 0.98 Hz flagged an anomaly did the Outer Rim observatories awaken. Automated diagnostics compared the waveform against thousands of archived radar logs and cosmic tape recordings. A frequency untouched for 3 centuries, an exact match for Epsilon 7's original emission, triggered a centuries-old military protocol. Top secret, emergency level red. Beneath 2 kilometers of Mars's red sands, the Athena Fortress complex stirred back to life. Built in the final days of the Dominion Wars when Earth's factions feared the rise of bioweapons and autonomous armaments, Athena had been sealed with other superweapon projects once peace returned. Now, 3 whispered commands from a seemingly bygone age rekindled her subterranean engines. In the damp, mineral-rich air of the deep tunnels, the central console glowed scarlet under bulletproof mesh arches. The scent of lubricants and hot steel stirred memories of rapid wartime deployments. Stasis pods each nearly 4 meters long and wide enough to hold a colossal frame cracked open one by one, releasing tendrils of mint-colored cryofog. Integrated biosensors vibrated softly, checking artificial heartbeats, blood pressure, and oxygen saturation in preparation for the hour-long revival sequence. The first pod door slid aside, exhaling a labored breath like the tentative gasp of a being awakened after 3 centuries of sleep. In its frame stood the towering figure of Captain James Walker, nearly 3 meters tall, with shoulders twice the width of an ordinary man and muscles veined in deep blue. He rose slowly. His infrared optics and low-light refractive implants adjusted instantly to the dim glow. He inhaled deeply, each breath reaffirming, "I am alive," yet buried within his mind, memories of the final battle and his original purpose throbbed, causing his limbs to twitch as dormant nanocomputers rebooted. Status report. Walker barked in a voice as rough and metallic as old steel. A female, voiced AI, its tone edged with circuitry, responded. Emergency Protocol Delta 9 activated. Distress signal matching designated parameters received. Revival of War Giant Battalion 6 Alpha in progress. Data scrolled on the console. The signal originated from Colony D17 coordinates absent from any modern human chart. As Walker stepped from the pod, his massive limbs remembered every movement. He glanced. Around 11 adjacent pods were awakening, exposing genetic cores and carbon composite frames of his colossal comrades through the frost. The cavern hummed with machinery. Green-hued lights danced across nano-armored gauntlets, a stark reminder that they were not mere soldiers, but the pinnacle of military engineering, born for one purpose: to protect humanity. 327 standard years since shutdown, intoned the AI, its voice emotionless as a bulletin. Walker closed his eyes, savoring the silent weight of that time. 3 centuries had passed, and the beings created to obliterate the greatest threat now lingered only as echoes in history. But someone somewhere far beyond had remembered them. An unseen voice had whispered that sometimes the power we bury is our final salvation. He turned to face his awakening brothers. In every pair of eyes, Reeves, Reed, Maxwell, Foster, and the rest out mingled with resolve. This distress call was more than a plea. It was proof of an unwritten future, where a weapon of the past could become hope for a new age. And as the final pod door sealed shut, the 12 Titans strode into the steel corridor, the red console light blinking its relentless warning. Help us. Help us. Reactivating the War Giants Battalion, the red warning light on the central console continued its relentless pulse as Walker strode slowly down the cold steel corridor. Each bootstep echoed like a discordant alarm, tearing through the deathly silence of the Athena fortress. The air hung heavy with moisture, the scent of lubricants and hot metal intertwined, evoking memories of a bygone era of fire and bloodshed. Walker raised his hand to the auxiliary control panel and read aloud the instruction flashing on the screen. Initialize revival sequence for Battalion 6 Alpha. Along the rows of stasis pods, centuries-old frost melted into droplets on the pressure glass. The biocontrol monitors flared to life, cycling through simulated vital signs preset heart rates, optimal blood pressures, and oxygen saturation levels maintained by the reserve cellular regenerators. The second pod hissed open, exhaling a plume of mint-tinted cryofog that reverberated through the chamber. Seconds later, the colossal figure of Commander Lisa Reeves emerged nearly 2 meters tall, her massive frame nonetheless exuding a grace underlined by the short, damp strands of her dark hair, her cold, calculating eyes reflecting the pod's soft green glow. Reeves drew a deep breath, bracing herself against the lingering disorientation. "Captain?" she called, her voice cracking slightly through the integrated comlink. Walker inclined his head, replying in his gravelly tones. "Reeves, we're awake. Protocol Delta, 9. He hesitated, as if confirming his own words, then exhaled. "Someone needs us." Reeves squared her shoulders, her cybernetic augmentations catching the faint light as she scanned the room. 3 more pods opened in sequence, each releasing short breaths of vapor and revealing 6 more towering figures. Major Thomas Reedus, square jaw and broad shoulders, testament to raw power. Lieutenant Anna Maxwell-Slender, yet formidable, her perceptive gaze able to penetrate the darkest expanse. Sergeant Daniel Fosterhis, angular face marked by countless campaigns of war, all stood in sleek stasis suits, optic filaments glowing azure, poised to receive their restoration charge. Walker approached the secondary command console and entered the override password, Athena Omega, unlocking the extended bioscanning interface. The database displayed the dossiers of the 12 war giants, listing attributes: tenfold human strength, quintupled reflex speed, tolerance for extreme pressures and radiation. They were the apex of heavy cybernetic biotech nanorobotic tissue regenerators woven into carbon composite skeletons, muscles reinforced by biomolecular actuators. Reaves leaned down, retrieving her nanophotonic exoskeletal armor ultralight, yet dozens of times stronger than conventional steel design to let them wield ton-scale weaponry as effortlessly as lifting a feather. With a tap on her HUD, she initiated the full systems online command. A delicate chime rang out as her right, shoulder-mounted Gauss rifle powered up, its indicator light turning vibrant green. Walker inspected his team for a final moment before moving to Pod 4. He lifted the hatch, his broad shoulders hunched slightly to emerge from the cryogenic chill. The stasis suit contracted snugly around him, nanites beginning to reassemble bone and muscle fiber. He drew in a lungful of recycled air, feeling artificial blood surge through carbon-reinforced arteries. "System check," he intoned. A quick staccato of tones fed into his HUD, confirming. "Musculoskeletal systems nominal. Optical and auditory modules online. Combat readiness 87%. Cold sweat beaded on Reaves's brow as she stepped out. Gently, she placed a hand on Walker's armored shoulder. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Like I just woke from a dream," he replied. His gaze swept across the dozen figures, now stirring upright. The hiss of opening hatches, the creak of joint actuators, and the subtle hum of reactivating nanites filled the room as each giant reclaimed their stance. Despite 3 centuries in stasis, they retained the bearing of supreme warriors, chests thrown forward, backs unbowed, eyes fixed on the main schematic flickering on the central display. Walker moved to the primary console and typed rapidly, "Boot tactical interface." Instantly, a 3-dimensional star map of the Jupiter system appeared, red markers pulsing at the source of the distress signal. Surrounding it lay an outdated galactic charteras of expansions, uncharted nebulae erased and overwritten, evidence of how far humanity had reached while they slept. "D17, Reaves murmured. "That coordinate doesn't exist on any modern atlas." Walker nodded gravely. "Exactly why we were summoned. Someone out there remembered us." Reaves tapped the red blip, zooming in. "It's under fire," she said, noticing successive shockwave readings. Multiple pulse frequencies must be in attack. The hiss of pneumatic pumps announced the activation of the support systems. Conduits of power and oxygen flickered on, sustaining the stasis chamber area. Industrial drones stirred, unlocking arms and cargo modules. Exoskeletal plates, weapons racks, and compact BrahMos fusion cells slid into readiness. The war giants needed only to equip. The fortress provided heavy ordnance in seconds. Major Reed strode to an equipment rack and snapped an exo magazine into his railgun. "This baby's still zeroed," he murmured, checking the weapon's energy coils. "Can punch through any Mark III energy shield." Lieutenant Maxwell nodded, her slender fingers brushing a nanomesh gauntlet as she ran diagnostics on her HUD. "We'll need to recalibrate our receiver's frequency spectrums have shifted since we last operated." She interfaced with the console, uploading updated firmware. Lights flickered on her visor. "Calibration complete." Sergeant Foster, grinning despite the tension, checked his handheld diagnostics. "Don't worry, we've got everything we need. We only lack the battlefield under our boots." Walker placed a gauntleted hand on a control panel. "We won't need long." He turned to Reaves. "Prep the crew for deployment." She tapped the deployment sequence, opening a series of sliding blast doors leading to the launch bay. Heavy steel doors rumbled aside, revealing the Nemesis-class carrier's cavernous hold, sleek, black, and purpose-built for colossal payload. 2 dropship bays awaited, each only large enough to carry 4 giants in formation. Floodlights ignited, and overhead magnetic grapples prepared to secure and balance their colossal mass. Walker surveyed his resurrected battalion, 12 towering forms, each bearing the marks of their unique roles, from Reaves's poised command presence, Reed's steadfast strength, Maxwell's tactical acuity, to Foster's battle-hardened resolve. They were more than living weapons. They embodied sacrifice and duty. He raised his fist in a silent salute. "All units, prepare for departure." His voice boomed through the cavern. "We move out to save humanity." Awakened from 3 centuries of hibernation, the 12 war giants stood bathed in emerald illumination, clad in exoskeletal armor and wielding venerable but lethal arms. They prepared to step into a universe they no longer knew, bound for the besieged colony D-17th origin of the plea for aid. The distress signal had been heeded, and the reborn giants of Athena Fortress surged into the void, ready to start a new chapter in a war fought not just for victory, but for the very survival of humankind. Command Conference. Departure. A faint emerald glow washed over the Strategic Operations Chamber aboard the Nemesis as Captain Walker strode to the center of the console array. Beyond the viewport, the star-studded void stretched endlessly, a stark reminder that untold perils lurked in uncharted space. Walker raised his hand, and the holographic legend, Tactical Briefing, flared on the central display. His awakened war giants assembled at his signal, their faces set with steely resolve. Commander Reaves stepped forward to the control panel. Her voice rang out clearly over the ship's intercom. The distress beacon originates from Colony 17 at coordinates 14.3, 92-4, N 23.107-4, E, situated in the Taurus Prime system. The hologram spun, enlarging a star map with a blinking red dot marking D-17's position. Reaves continued. Analysis of the signal indicates repeated shockwave pulses. Long-range scans show scorch marks and drifting plasma debris in the colony's orbital ring. It appears both the defensive platforms and residential zones have sustained severe damage. Major Reed folded away the auxiliary map on his console, his brow furrowed. D-17's orbital defenses were designed only for civilian traffic control, not heavy assault weapons. Intelligence also suggests encounters with an enemy capable of generating localized darkness, Reavers, as our archives label them. He tapped a 3D model of their dropships, reading off response velocities and launch trajectories. Our battalion will split into 2 teams, a 4-unit strike squad for rapid counterattack and a rescue contingent to secure and evacuate civilians. Lieutenant Maxwell flipped a switch to display spectrum analysis of the D-17 environment. UV and infrared bands are overlapping, creating sensory dead zones that blind conventional radar to high-velocity threats. We'll have to rely on each giant's exoskeleton, terrain-penetrating optics, and infrared sensors. She met Walker's gaze. I recommend we deploy in an X formation to optimize coverage and protect flanks. Sergeant Foster pulled up a schematic of the colony on his handheld HUD and pointed at the residential sectors and industrial districts. 2 primary insertion points, directly over the central Plaza Fastis to reach the civilians, but risking high collateral harm near the artificial lake, where smoke and mist can mask our dropships. He shrugged with grim determination. I proposed landing by the lake and infiltrating through the service tunnels into the housing blocks. That way, civilians get rescued swiftly, and our presence is harder to detect. Walker listened in silent contemplation, fingertips tapping the console. He then opened the ship-wide comm channel. Attention, all units. Our mission is not only to engage enemy forces, but to safeguard civilian lives. Foster's proposal minimizes civilian risk. We'll adopt Plan B, land at Lake Waterfall, then split into 2 groups. Reaves leads the rescue team. Reed spearheads the strike force against the Reavers. He paused, scanning each giant's eyes. Any objections? No one spoke. Every soldier awaited his command. Maxwell tapped her agreement on her wrist display. I've patched temporary comm relays for the rescue squad. Each second counts. Reaves nodded. I'll lead the first wave to clear landing zones and establish comms, Reed added firmly. We'll set up an interim ammo and maintenance depot south of the lake, where we can rearm with minimal exposure. Taking a deep breath, Walker made it official. Very well. All personnel, prepare for deployment. Switch combat systems to ready. Activate headsets and HUD in silent mode only. The command channel remains open. Launch scheduled in T-10 minutes. His voice carried through all 7 dropship bays. This is your first view of D-17. Expect anything from panicked civilians to sudden Reaver ambushes. Instantly, the dropship corridors sprang to life. Industrial drones slid out crates of equipment. Nanobot assemblers began fitting each soldier with customized loadouts, railguns, plasma grenade launchers, reinforced energy shields, and neural uplink modules. The hiss of pneumatic actuators blended with the clang of metal as each giant suit locked systems online in seconds. Walker, Reeves, Reed, Maxwell, and Foster boarded the first dropship. The heavy blast doors hissed shut behind them. Outside, the Nemesis hangar thrummed with activity like a hive. Tech crews monitored magnetic grapples as the vessels were drawn into the launch rails. Sealed airlocks cycled under precise pressure adjustments, imbuing the loaded bay with a tense anticipation of imminent battle. On the bridge of the Nemesis, Captain Walker stood before the massive observation port, watching 3 drop ships rise on their mounts. A voice crackled over the PA. All systems nominal. Departure sequence engaged. Engines charging. A cool blue luminescence bathed the fusion microthrusters as power levels spiked. A low rumble resonated through the hangar metal awakening from centuries of dormancy. Walker's HUD countdown began. T-minus 5 minutes. He settled into the command chair, hand resting on the primary launch control lever. He glanced at Reeves, who offered a steely nod. "Remember," she reminded him quietly, "preserve civilian lives first and maintain comms integrity. Underestimate no enemy." "Understood," Walker replied. He then faced Reed. "Strike swiftly. Maxwell, keep the data flowing. Foster, secure the evac points." The countdown leaped forward. T-minus 3 minutes, T-minus 2. The hush of expectancy grew deafening. Outside, microfusion thrusters hummed. The ship's floor vibrated as the dropships aligned to their launch vectors. Walker's eyes locked on the trajectory display, each angle meticulously pre-calculated. At 0, silence reigned for 3 heartbeats. Then, with a synchronized roar, all 3 drop ships shot free of Nemesis's bay. Their engine's guttural roar shook the bay as searing aft plume trails illuminated the hangar. They pierced the darkness of space, leaving behind wisps of plasma that shimmered under distant starlight. Aboard each vessel, the giants felt every thrust through their HUD feedback. They exchanged curt nods, eyes blazing with warrior fire. Reeves's voice cut through. "Lock on drop coordinates. Final approach, ETA 45 minutes. Walker exhaled steadily, jaw set. "Let's make D-17 the safest place in the universe." And with that, the reawakened titans of Athena Fortress raced toward their greatest challenge in alien onslaught at Colony D-17 and the promise of salvation for its beleaguered inhabitants. The first battle on Colony D-17. Only 6 hours remained on their flight from the Nemesis when the 3 drop ships pierced the thin atmosphere of D-17. Trails of plasma fire skittered along their hulls, painting silver arcs against the burning red sky. Below them lay a scene of utter devastation. Skeletal steel frameworks of dozens of shattered buildings, black smoke spiraling up from the rubble, and raging orange flames licking at gray, ash-covered ground. Once a flourishing valley of engineered glass fields, D-17 now resembled a graveyard of crashed vessels and charred debris. "Approach pattern confirmed," Reeves's calm voice crackled over their comlinks. "We'll touch down on Lake Waterfall in 2 minutes. Brace for plasma rain and possible ground assault." Heartbeats quickened inside each war giant's exoskeletal frame as Walker steadied himself behind the control panel. "All units," he intoned, "engage full energy. Cloak mode only, discharge live rounds when absolutely necessary. We need total surprise from the first second." The lead dropship skimmed low over the lake's surface, condensation plumes masking its approach like a ghost in the mist. Below, emergency defense turrets unleashed streaks of plasma, their shells arc-firing toward the intruders. Maxwell swung her shoulder-mounted Gauss cannon into position and squeezed the trigger. Super-dense metal slugs ripped through the hastily erected energy barrier, shredding it in a flash of white-hot sparks. The ruined auto-mortar battery behind it collapsed into twisted wreckage. All three vessels splashed down almost simultaneously, violent ripples vaporizing into a thick steam that cloaked their hulls. Inside the landing bays, hydraulic pistons hissed. Landing complete. Robotic arms unlocked the restraints and shoved each war giant onto the water's surface. As their boots struck the shallows, metallic echoes reverberated across the battered shoreline like warning bells. A cluster of terrified survivors huddled behind a mobile barricade of civilians, trembling with relief and disbelief at the sight of these titanic protectors. An old man, leaning on a gnarled staff, steadied himself and spoke into his comm mic. "Please, help us." Walker knelt, his voice gentle yet authoritative. "Stand down. Protecting civilians is our top priority. Reaves, establish a safe zone by the escape tunnel entrance." Reaves extended her hand and a soft blue aura emanated from her palm. The safe zone generator activated, erecting a 10-meter energy shield. Inside, plasma and dust were instantly dissipated, leaving a calm pocket of breathable air. Shivering residents stepped forward, pressing into the clear space to bandage wounds and catch their breath. Foster crouched beside a young woman, clutching her child, his suit's medical module knitting torn flesh and sealing puncture wounds. "She'll be fine," he reassured her, applying hemostatic gel. Meanwhile, Reed and his strike team fell back a short distance to scan the battlefield. On their HUDs flickered dozens of formless shadows, void Reavers darting through the devastation like predators on the hunt. They emitted no sound but left tremors in their wake. Reed squeezed off the first Gauss volley. A Reaver's form burst apart in a cloud of oily black smoke before collapsing. "Direct hit," he reported. "These beasts can be killed." Yet the darkness pressed in from every corner. Reavers split into small packs, slinking along ruined walls and probing defenses with sporadic plasma bursts. Maxwell adjusted her HUD overlay and murmured, "They don't fight like soldiers. They move like ravenous wildlife." Walker's decision was swift. "Divide into two flanks and seal them in a funnel. Reed and I will push from the south. Reaves and Maxwell will encircle from the north." Their boots pounded the scorched earth, each step triggering seismic ripples that cracked nearby glass shards. Reed braced his railgun and unleashed a multi-pulse round. Its trail of crucible, hardened steel cleaved through several Reavers in a single salvo. Each beast dissolved into writhing black mist before collapse. To the north, Reaves and Maxwell struck in unison, plasma launchers weaving a fiery net that cut off any escape route. Maxwell hefted an electro-Gauss warhammer in one hand and emptied rapid bursts from her sidearm with the other, carving a corridor through the Reaver horde. Working like a lethal dance duo, they forced the creatures into a tight pocket and captured 3 survivors alive, valuable for future study. Beyond the chaos, Walker observed the civilians being guided back toward the temporary refuge. A teenage boy emerged and stammered into Walker's comm. You're the legends my father used to tell me about. I never thought you were real." Walker's voice softened. "We exist to protect you." He glanced at Foster. "Collect biosamples, DNA, and any cybernetic traces, then report to Maxwell for immediate analysis." The engagement raged on for nearly 2 hours. Reaver waves mounted relentless assaults, but each was repelled by the war giant's superior firepower and indomitable presence. At one point, a Reaver lunged and unleashed a thunderous shockwave that brought down a nearby structure. Maxwell swiftly raised a personal energy shield, halting flying debris inches from her visor, then countered with a single hammer strike that obliterated the creature's limb. As gunfire waned and steam cleared, the battlefield lay littered with sparkling glass fragments and dripping metal slag. Over 20 Reavers lay strewn about, and Allied soldiers had detained several more for interrogation. Walker climbed onto a fallen facade to survey the scene. Grateful civilians peered out from behind reinforced doors, their faces a mix of awe and relief. Reed and Foster knelt among the wreckage, gathering vials of viscous black ichor and shards of techno-organic plating. "It's done," Foster announced, holding up a sealed sample tube. "I'll hand these to Maxwell for spectrographic analysis. Maxwell nodded. "I need minutes to identify UV markers and test tech compatibility." Walker keyed his comm. "All civilians safe, for now. I'm forwarding the situation report to the Nemesis." He turned to watch his team move with clockwork precision. Devonteen had breathed its first sigh of safety, but Walker knew it was only the beginning. Other colonies still cried out, and the Reavers would regroup. He rallied his forces. "Fall back to the main shelter. Reeves, continue civilian evac. Reed and Foster, secure and catalog samples. Maxwell, commence biotech analysis immediately. I'll coordinate with the Nemesis." As the war giants marched into the subterranean refuge, red emergency lights reflected off their exo-armor like a vow etched in steel and light. They would never leave another soul behind in fire and blood, and would fight to their last breath to keep humanity's light burning. Fortifying the perimeter, training the civilians. In the aftermath of their first engagement, the war giants and the surviving colonists regrouped in the main subterranean shelter to stabilize their defenses and plan for the coming days. Flashlights bobbed through the cavernous command hall, illuminating exhausted but resolute faces. Captain Walker summoned his lieutenants commanders, Reeves, Reed, Maxwell, and Foster, around the central holographic map. Together, they dissected the recent battle, pinpointing vulnerable weak spots where the Reavers might strike again and identifying the optimal lines of defense. Reeves quickly marked 4 primary choke points, encircling the shelter, prioritizing civilian ingress routes and the water storage facility. Foster proposed improvised mine launcher arrays using recycled scrap metal and remote UV-triggered detonators. Reed added a plan to erect energy trenches by repurposing the broken dropship's deflector shields into retractable barriers. Maxwell overlaid thermal signature hotspots and known radar blind zones onto the map, advising where Sentinel teams should remain most vigilant. Walker nodded in approval. "This is our foundation now, let's turn it into a fortress." To preserve their limited manpower, the war giants immediately began training civilian volunteers. Their first session took place on the broad plaza outside the shelter entrance. Foster addressed a crowd of over 30 men, women, and elders, teaching them the fundamentals of shotgun handling. He demonstrated a solid firing stance, firm cheek weld, and decisive trigger pull. The makeshift shotgun shallow steel barrels welded to crude wooden stocks suddenly became vital life-saving tools under his patient guidance. Meanwhile, Reed and 2 fellow giants calibrated the bulky shoulder-mounted Gauss rifles for civilian use. They showed recruits how to load each magnetic slug cartridge and engage the electric coil charging mechanism. To the astonishment of many, the Warforged recoil dampeners in the Gauss rifles almost completely neutralized kickback, enabling even untrained hands to fire with surprising steadiness. At Reeves's direction, Maxwell distributed infrared goggles to small squads, explaining how to power up the helmet HUD modules and adjust sensitivity for cluttered, dust-choked environment. She dimmed the lights and demonstrated how a Reaver's heat signature would pop against the ruined backdrop, giving civilians a vital edge in low visibility conditions. Reeves led instruction on urban guerrilla tactics, how to move silently between rubble, strewn cover, exploit narrow alleyways for ambush, and avoid silhouetting themselves against open sky. Each lesson lasted 10 hours straight, punctuated only by short breaks, while Foster and Reed administered field dressing aid to those strained by unfamiliar exertion. Installing the early warning network, while civilians drilled, the war giants split into task teams to erect an early warning grid. Walker and Maxwell headed a technical crew to drill anchors into the bedrock foundation of the valley floor. They installed 3 long-range laser transmitters in a triangular configuration, linking each station via infrared beacon pulses. A 4th node, mounted atop the energy trench near the water tanks, served as an uplink that would trigger an automated lockdown if enemy movement was detected. Reed collaborated with militia engineers to construct a makeshift watchtower from salvaged steel scaffolding. They mounted powerful UV floodlights and high-gain radar beacons to detect the looming Reaver silhouettes. Whenever a station signaled an intruder, Reinforced bulkhead gates sealed the tunnel entrances and shepherded civilians back into the shelter. This deceptively simple system slashed potential civilian casualties by ensuring that no Reaver advance went unnoticed. Patrols and reconnaissance? Over the following days, Maxwell and Foster led a dedicated reconnaissance unit on fixed-route patrols. They deployed small rotary drones equipped with infrared cameras and shortwave radar, sweeping a 2-kilometer perimeter around the shelter. Whenever a drone picked up an anomalous heat signature or disturbed Earth-possible Reaver footprints, the team recorded exact coordinates and relayed them to Walker and Reed, who dispatched rapid response squads to investigate. Reeves organized civilian watch rotations, blending ground patrols with static posts at tunnel exits. Each 4-hour shift alternated between direct observation and remote monitoring consoles linked to drone feeds. This continuous vigilance meant that any sudden Reaver foray would trigger an alarm long before it reached the inner defenses, building morale, teaching discipline, understanding that mere weapons could never substitute for courage. The War Giants also held daily leadership and discipline drills. Reed guided civilians through basic military formations: at, attention, right face, left face, and V-shaped squad maneuvers, ideal for small unit scouting. Maxwell presented a concise lecture on hit-and-run tactics, using ruined walls, hidden caves, and rocky crags for ambush, before slipping away unseen. Reeves ran a battlefield first aid course, teaching bandaging, hemorrhage control, emergency oxygen administration, and shock prevention using their portable medical kits. Foster shared hard-won lessons from previous campaigns, emphasizing that bravery and unity were their greatest asset. No weapon, no matter how powerful, he told them, can replace the strength we gain when we stand together. Each session concluded with a rousing round of applause, and volunteers left with newfound confidence that they could defend their homes. Night watches, rapid response drills. When darkness fell, the defense grid and training program remained in full swing. Reed and Maxwell took alternate night shifts, guiding civilians through silent tunnel patrols, illuminated only by dim UV flares and IR scopes. They coordinated live exercises. When a peripheral drone signaled movement, civilian squads rushed to intercept, practicing the lockdown drills and engagement protocols until every reaction was second nature. One misty dawn, the UV alarm shrieked from an outpost on the northern ridge. Maxwell analyzed the thermal feed. 5 hulking shapes were closing in fast. Walker sounded the main siren as civilians armed themselves in 2 lines along the tunnel approach. "Lower your barrel weight for the signal," Reed commanded. At his call, civvies unleashed synchronized shotgun blasts and Gauss volleys overhead, generating a wall of smoke and tracer bright spray that struck the first Reaver pack. Foster and Reeves swiftly deployed UV-fused mines behind them, cutting off their retreat. The ambush was over in seconds, proof that the civilians had mastered their training and could stand toe-to-toe with the enemy, forging a true stronghold. When night once again draped the valley in shadow, the War Giants and their civilian defenders gathered around a crackling fire pit. Voices rose and fell as they recounted the day's trials and triumphs. Walker stood amid them, firelight dancing across his steely features. "You've done exceptionally well," he praised. "You've learned not just to wield weapons, but to fight as a cohesive force. That unity is worth more than any arsenal." Reeves closed the meeting. "Our defenses are strong, but our greatest strength is our solidarity, and that fighting spirit will never fade." A swell of applause rippled through the group, their faces reflecting both flickering flames and renewed hope. Under the War Giants' vigilant protection, and with their own hands now capable defenders, the people of D-17 began to believe that even this shattered world could become a bastion of human resilience once more. Encounter and understanding of the Void Reavers. Under the cloak of D-17's night, the War Giants gathered around a makeshift vacuum containment station, a reinforced steel cage erected in the main plaza, sturdy enough to hold a captured Void Reaver alive. At dawn, after retrieving biological samples and preliminary data synthesis, Maxwell decided to trap one of the creatures to learn more about this enigmatic enemy. She and Foster led a small team Reed and 2 elite civilian militias silently herding the older, slower Reavers into a dark corner of the square. Under the ultraviolet lamps rigged around the perimeter, the Reavers' skin glowed deep violet, their bodies trembling with strange thermal signatures on the HUD. The first Reaver was secured after a flawless coordinated strike. Reed launched a hyperdense metal dart that pierced its forelimb, freezing it in place. Foster then activated a high-tensile nano-mesh net that cinched tightly around its torso. The Reaver thrashed violently, but the mesh constricted further, and a temporary UV field projected on its skin prevented it from absorbing light to cloak itself. Maxwell seized the moment, using a handheld UV pulse emitter to initiate a spectral scan, recording the rapid flickers of light radiated from the creature's epidermis. These flickers were not random. They formed ultra-fast blinking patterns, conveying a rudimentary light-based language that Maxwell had once studied, the basic protocol for Reaver hunting pack. She immediately linked her translator module to the HUD and ran a decryption algorithm. The translation scrawled onto her display, "Help us." A hush fell over the team. The words, "Help us," echoed the distress call sent by the Epsilon, 7 station 3 centuries ago. Walker and Reeves were alerted at once. They approached the cage with tense expressions. Walker asked quietly, "They're calling for aid?" Maxwell nodded, excitement and shock in her voice. "Exactly. These creatures are not mindless predators, but a traumatized community." Foster frowned, his tone gravelly. "Yet they attacked civilians without mercy when they first arrived." Maxwell switched to detailed scanning mode. "They attack out of starvation. Their central hive mind control is damaged. They're disoriented and driven by a malignant force." Reeves signaled Foster to move the containment cage into the temporary command center. There, they outfitted it with pressure sensors and additional bioscanners to gather continuous readings. Reed cautioned, "Maintain careful pressure thresholds. Any sudden spike could rupture the cage and endanger everyone." Walker gave the go-ahead in a low voice. "Proceed." Maxwell positioned her light emitter close to the Reaver, modulating pulses to mimic its own blinking sequence. Abruptly, the creature stilled. Its violet glow shifted to a pulsing green. Maxwell's HUD interpreted it as the signal for "understood." Through successive exchanges of light bursts of precise flashes interspersed with pauses, the Reaver revealed a staggering truth. "We flee a worse enemy." Maxwell's translator converted this. The Void Reavers were being hunted themselves, forced to scavenge for food, but they were victims of a far greater threat that had pursued them for months. Foster's brow furrowed. "What hunts the Reavers?" Maxwell scrolled through her data. "They call them the Devours of Stars. They obliterate entire star systems, driving the Reavers into exile." Walker's eyes narrowed. "This only scratches the surface. Ask where the enemy is gathering." Maxwell replicated the Reavers' pattern. "They mass in this system, 12 light-years away." This revelation not only reframed their understanding of the Void Reavers, but also shed light on why Epsilon 7 had issued its final plea for help. Reeves straightened, her voice grave. "If they are victims, we must not slaughter them indiscriminately." Reed, gripping a sample vial, countered coldly. "But they attacked our people. We can't ignore that." Walker closed his eyes, reflecting. After a moment, he opened them and declared, "We will pursue 2 objectives concurrently: secure Colony 17 and establish deeper communication with the Reavers. We must send an encrypted report to the Nemesis containing details on the Devoris. That way, we'll pinpoint the true threat's location and scale." Maxwell's enthusiasm flared. "They respond immediately to UV-based signals. I can set up a 2-way comm link transfer data files, even map their movements in real time." Foster grimaced. "Be cautious. UV communication is nearly illegal under the Stellar Council's treaties. If detected, we face severe repercussions." Reeves raised a hand. "This intelligence is worth any risk." Walker nodded, eyes drifting to the holographic star chart. I've already briefed Admiral Chen via encrypted channel. They are awaiting our full report. This is our first confirmed first contact with a new life form. Prepare scientific dossiers and an operational plan. In the days that followed, Maxwell and Foster engineered a portable communication array compact enough to fit on dropships and drone pylons. Each time a Reaver was secured in the containment cage, Maxwell simply activated the array, and the creature's signals streamed directly to the Nemesis's data core. Shipboard analysts decrypted the pulses and relayed follow-up questions. Through this unprecedented dialogue, they learned that the Reavers had once thrived in a complex ecosystem sustained by crystalline energy fields, until the Devoris arrived and converted whole worlds into bioharvest zones. The second Reaver, temporarily housed in the pressurized pen, gradually grew less combative. It began responding with rapid light sequences that traced safe enclaves around its former habitats on D-17 areas. Maxwell translated as crystalline frost forests, not deserts. Reeves fell silent, contemplating a plan to restore humid microclimates and water conduits to recreate a livable refuge for the Reavers once the crisis passed. Before departing 17, Walker elected to initiate a face-to-face parley. He approached the containment station, standing a meter from the cage, eyes unwavering. Maxwell sent a gentle UV pulse. "We come to help." The Reaver blinked twice, then its skin glowed soft pink, the sign for trust established. Walker nodded solemnly. "I promise, we will not destroy you. Together, we will fight the Devorers." That silent, tableaugent human warriors and a luminous alien bound by wordless understanding etched itself into everyone's memory. Desentine had grown beyond a mere plasma outpost or battleground. It had become a bridge between two species. The war giants and the void Reavers predators, turned allies, would unite against the looming threat of the Devorers of stars, striving to stop them before they extinguished every spark of life in the galaxy. Conflict with the Earth Council, the assault plan. As trust between the war giants and the void Reavers deepened, Captain Walker was summoned by an urgent transmission from Admiral Chen aboard the UEF Resolute. He hurried to the temporary command center, where a massive holographic display showed 3 modern warships patrolling the skies above D-17. Admiral Chen's stern visage materialized on the screen, framed by the insignia of the United Earth Forces. Admiral Chen, over video link. "Captain Walker, the Federation Council is divided. One faction demands the immediate deactivation of the war giants, citing risks inherent in their unstable biotech. The other faction acknowledges your rescue of D-17 and the invaluable intelligence you have provided about the Devorers. We've been ordered to conduct a thorough review of your battalion's capabilities and intent." Walker stood tall, voice calm but resolute. "Admiral, we have not only rescued a devastated colony, we have made first contact with a new civilization and uncovered a threat far more dangerous than the Reavers. The Devorers are approaching." Chen's eyes flickered as intelligence data scrolled behind her. She pressed a command, and battle statistics and council voting records appeared alongside the starfield. "Admiral Chen, the council requires clarity. Are the war giants a tool of war or guardians of humanity? They demand a precise operational plan before any further orders." Without hesitation, Walker activated the strategic map. A holographic star chart traced a route from Jupiter's system to Mars, then onto D-17, and 12 light-years beyond to the coordinates identified by the Reavers as the Devorers' stronghold. He summarized crisply. "Walker, we have the Devorers' base coordinate Tessa, desolate, irradiated rocky world. If we do not act soon, their scouts will probe 17's defenses, then leap outward to threaten other colonies." Chen scrutinized the map, then asked, "What are your current manpower and armaments?" Walker, 12 war giants and 217 civilian militia trained in basic combat. Our primary weapons are Gauss rifles and plasma launchers, retrofits of ancient prototypes. We also have the portable Reaver communication device feeding real-time intel, plus 4 micro-scout drones. However, the Nemesis can only rearm us one more time before final departure. Admiral Chen tapped her console. The Council has approved 3 escort vessels each, carrying 20 light infantry with energy weapons, but no heavy air support, due to concerns over tech incompatibility. A tense silence fell over the command center. Maxwell swiftly uploaded revised tactical overlays to the HUD and spoke up. Maxwell, our assault needs to be twofold. Phase 1. Forward the war giants and drones in a diversionary strike. Reinforce D-17's defenses with militia support. Phase 2. Deploy main forces from Nemesis directly against the Devoris orbital installations. Reed interjected, brow furrowed. Reed, those escort ships can't punch through high-density radiation fields. We'll still have to rely on mechanical weaponry to breach the Devoris energy barriers. Foster added gravely, Foster, we've seen how Gauss fire neutralized Reaver shields. Devoris likely use similar technology, maybe on a massive scale. Admiral Chen nodded slowly. Admiral Chen, the Council approves a 2-stage operation. Phase 1. Insert a special task force of 4 war giants and 20 UEF light infantry via low-orbit drop to disable enemy radar arrays. Phase 2. Main force war. Giants and 17 militia will board from the Nemesis simultaneously. Be advised, the Council remains wary. The potential for the Giants to turn on civilian targets once their objectives are met cannot be entirely dismissed. Walker's response was immediate and unwavering. Walker, that will not happen. The war giants have demonstrated their protective duty over combat instinct. Our actions on 17 speak for themselves. The Council can review the after-action reports. Admiral Chen exhaled, her voice softening just a fraction. Admiral Chen, very well. You are authorized to engage the Devoris, subject to mandatory status reports every 24 hours. And a strict operational limit of 8 hours outside 17's orbital perimeter. Walker turned to his officers. Walker, prepare immediately. We have 48 hours to finalize 17's defenses and launch toward the Devoris. Reeves spoke up without hesitation. Reeves, we need hardened charges to breach crystalline energy gates, enhanced UV disruptors to disable control nodes, and direct ingress to the command core. Reed's tone was equally determined. Reed, I have developed a high-intensity UV breaching device that induces rapid nano decomposition. Maxwell, I will carry the Reaver comm beacon. If we can hijack the Devoris control frequencies, we might trigger an internal failsafe. Before the command session ended, Foster raised a crucial concern. Foster, we must also defend the Nemesis and 17's orbit. If the Devoris retaliate, they'll strike our supply lines first. Walker nodded, pressing a control that projected orbital defense schematics ghostly, outlines of nuclear-tipped old dropships positioned at Lagrange points between 17 and the Devoris system. Walker, these improvised traps will detonate if any vessels above a threshold mass cross their path, creating a plasma barrier to shield Nemesis and escort ships. Admiral Chen activated her camera feed, revealing the energy grid and auto-launch sequences. Admiral Chen, this net will automatically fire when it detects large objects. It will protect your fleet in orbit. Walker released a breath and saluted the hollow projection. Walker, perfect. Relay this to the Council. We are ready. Admiral Chen, good luck, Captain. Report any anomalies immediately. The briefing concluded. War giants and their cadre sprang into motion. Reeves oversaw the mounting of UV breaching modules onto each drone 2 per unit with a 5-kilometer radius. Reed and 17 engineers crafted UV charges from reactor debris, synchronized for Gauss plating. Maxwell updated the Reaver beacon firmware for seamless Nemesis integration. Foster monitored the orbital trap matrix, running last-minute integrity checks. The HUD ticker counted down 36 hours to launch. As D-17 Scarlet Sunset bathed the compound, 3 escort ships descended through low orbit, disgorging the Phase 1 team, 4 war giants and 20 UEF light infantry. Their plasma-streaked arrival arcs cut bright lines across the heavens. The advanced squad swiftly neutralized the Devoris orbital radar blockade, then retasked Nemesis's scanning arrays toward the target star system. Within moments, violet UV bursts crisscrossed the night sky, jamming hostile relay frequency signaling. Phase 1 success. Back on 17, Walker assembled the main assault force. The remaining 8 war giants, a corps of 150 hardened militia equipped with Gauss rifles and plasma throwers, and 6 perimeter drones. He issued the order, Walker, Phase 2 is a go. We move into Devoris orbit. Remember, our mission is not only to eradicate the enemy, but to protect those who have nowhere else to turn like the Reavers. Stay sharp. The hologram zoomed in on the Devoris system. A dark, iron-rich world bathed in lethal infrared radiation, surrounded by colossal crystalline satellites, remnants of their victims' energy harvesters. Walker gave the final command, Walker, all assault glider crews board, ready to drop. Alarms rang out as the 3 drop ships aligned on the dark planet's low orbit, disappearing behind a curtain of asteroids. Thus commenced the decisive strike that would determine the fate of the war giants, the void Reavers, and the entire fabric of human civilization. Raid on the Reaver assembly world, liberation, and a new beginning. The 3 drop ships sliced through the thick, metal-laden atmosphere of the rocky planet Devoris IV. On every HUD, the planet appears as a dark gray orb cracked by glowing violet fissures, the telltale veins of massive energy crystals buried deep beneath its crust. Swirling crystalline satellites orbit the world, emitting continuous ultraviolet pulses that form a vast control network over the Reavers 12 light-years away. Before stepping off, Captain Walker issues his final orders. Land precisely at the mouth of the Heratos Volcanic Reaver's primary sanctuary. Group A will split off to engage defenses. Group B will advance on the Crystal Control Matrix. Maintain UV comms with drones and our Reaver allies. When the first dropship touches down, Walker, Reeves, and Reed leap out in unison. Their exosuits drop stealth mode, revealing the dull shimmer of iron-reinforced nanoalloys. Choking, acrid smoke curls around them. Reed deactivates his auto-filter and snaps on a plasma scrub respirator. The hatch's energy shield snaps open with a dry crackle, and the trio fans out into the volcano's cavernous interior. Acidic steam hisses from fissures in the basalt walls, illuminated by the purple wash of their shoulder-mounted UV lamps. Several hundred meters away, Group BM Maxwell, Foster, and a Reaver scouting. Squad threads through side passages toward the Crystal Control Core. Maxwell activates the UV.com beacon and sees the welcome flash. Ollie, welcome. She smiles and replies, We're ready. Foster straps high-yield UV charges to his backplate and readies the sample canister containing crystallized Reaver biomatter from D17. A precise detonation at the core should free your brethren, but it may collapse the entire control chamber. Meanwhile, Group A has reached the outer guard galleries. Reeves signals with a raised Gauss rifle, firing silent, cobalt-tipped rounds that pierce the Devorer's shimmering plasma shields. Each slug cuts through ionic barriers in a shower of golden sparks, extinguishing sulfurous glows and clearing the way for Reed to raid the enemy armory. I'll bring the CUV charge to the eastern turret, he says. Walker, prime the UV feed for me. Walker flicks on his portable energy transmitter. Nanites hum as they charge the UV emitter to maximum. Suddenly, alarms echo through the tunnel's mechanical clangs and panicked cries of Devorer sentries. Walker snarls. Full combat mode engage. The 3 of them erupt into motion, their weapons flaring. Reeves's Gauss rifle lashes out. Reed drives the butt of his exo-arm into a plasma-laced doorway. Walker's hydraulic boots stomp in time, hurling sentries aside. Plasma fragments sizzle through the gloom like falling stars. At the Crystal Core control node, Maxwell kneels beside her Reaver guide and toggles the electro-flash transmitter. She broadcasts a coded UV pulse sequence into the master module. Foster slots the crystallized sample into the test port, initiating a cascade of molecular decomposition. The Reavers' frantic UV pulses cry out, "We fear collapse." Maxwell lays a calming hand on its armored shoulder. "We'll carve out a safe zone." Outside the core chamber, Walker shouts over the din, "Eastern gallery sealed off. Reed, lock it down." Reed steps forward and fires Gauss magnetic rounds into the vacuum seal hatch, jamming it shut against any plasma backlash. Reeves punches a hole through the vitrified wall, clearing the path as Walker secures the CUV charge onto the control manifold. "See you on the other side of the collapse," he mutters. Racing back toward the shower of UV arcs, Maxwell yanks open the safety hatch and hustles Foster into position. He arms the UV detonator and slams the trigger. A blinding violet beam erupts, striking the crystalline nexus with such intensity that the entire planet vibrates. Liquid crystal splinters spray outward in a shimmering storm, bathing every corridor in ultraviolet fire. A shockwave rattles through the volcanic tunnels like a thunderclap. Control modules fracture. The UV pulse field sputters to a halt, and silence falls. After a breathless moment, every Reaver on Devoris IV recoils. Their violet reflections fade to a gentle amber glow. The comm beacon floods with a single message: "We are free." Along the labyrinthine halls, liberated Reavers converge on Maxwell's position, their bioluminescent carapaces flickering in celebration. Maxwell exclaims, "They're free." Foster lets out a relieved breath. "Now let's get him out before the chamber caves in." At the outer control hub, Walker slams down the emergency release lever and motions to Reed. Now, together, Reed and Reeves rip through the reinforced bulkhead to usher the exultant Reavers into the tunnels. Below, scouting drones pilot through a newly formed collapse, capturing footage of thousands of Reavers stepping into freedom plasma tears, glinting on their faces as they swell the tight corridors in a living tide of dawn-like gold. As the Heritos volcano begins to convulse, Walker roars, "Fall back!" Group A, flanked by their Reaver allies, retraces the escape tunnels. Tumbling debris and scalding dust choke the air. Maxwell and Foster guide the Reaver column along the UV-marked route, deftly avoiding hidden traps. At the volcano's rim, Reed secures the last ramp and helps the Reavers slide safely into the awaiting dropships. Above Devoris IV, the three transports ignite their engines, streaking back toward the Nemesis. Inside the hold, Reaver fugitives settle into temporary containment bays, their warm amber glow dancing across the viewport. Walker peers through the reinforced window and cracks a rare smile. "We did it." Reeves exhales. "We saved 2 species today." Reed nods quietly. "And they will rebuild their lost world." 3 days later, as the Resolute escorts the fleet back to D-17 orbit, Admiral Chen's face appears on the main screen. Her tone is measured but warm. "Admiral Chen, the Federation Council commends your courage and compassion. In recognition of the Devoris IV operation, we are establishing the Frontier Guardians Alliance, comprised of the War Giants, Freed Reavers, and UEF forces. Our new forward base will be D-17, the first outpost to monitor the Devorers of Stars. The liberated Reavers know longer shadows in the Dark Drift alongside the Nemesis hull, broadcasting harmonized UV signals of solidarity." Walker turns to his officers. "We aren't just warriors now, we're stewards of peace." Reeves smiles softly. "They chose us, just as we chose to protect them." Reed adds, "This is the dawn of a new era." Foster echoes, "And we'll stand ready for every dark frontier ahead." As D-17 sunrise glints off the nebula-cloaked horizon, giants and creatures of light stand shoulder to shoulder on the observation deck, gazing outward at an infinite sea of stars, guardians of life, and beacons of hope in a vast, shadowed universe.